happy Taco Tuesday. We're not going to waste any time telling you to subscribe or point out, what we're selling or anything. We're not going to waste any time on that, although I do want you to subscribe. We're going to talk my favorite sport, football. More specifically, Shedeur Sanders. Because it looks like Shedeur Sanders is not really going to get a fair shake. And although the narrative is that he's a cocky dude, he's Deion Sanders' son, he's the coach's son, he's, arrogant, he's this, he's that, he's everything under the sun. After I watched another YouTuber by the name of Will Evans, I believe he goes as urban legend Will Evans, he made a very good point, and go check out his channel, by the way. He made a very good point. He kind of went in a racist direction, but I think the way he explained what he explained makes perfect sense, and I don't think race has anything to do with it. What he was explaining was that Shedeur Sanders, not having an agent, went in there and negotiated an earth-shattering deal, like a deal that no one has ever signed before. And they're kind of upset because it may be a situation where they probably weren't expecting him to craft, such a deal, not having an agent. Mr. Will Evans said that it was probably to his advantage not to have an agent, because if you think about it, it's kind of in a situation where the NFL can shut you down if they don't like you. So if you're an agent and you come up with these earth-shattering financial deals, they're probably going to figure out a way to get rid of you, because they don't want that spreading around, and they want to keep most of their money. So the deal that he made was basically a continuation of his NIL deal in college, whereas he wants a piece of everything. He's a brand in and of itself. He's his own business. By himself. Some were to say he's bigger than football. I don't know if I would go that far, but he's pretty damn big. Because everybody that commented preseason debut also mentioned that once they took him out of the game, they turned the channel. So basically what that means is, unless you're a diehard Cleveland fan, probably not going to pull in any new fans, with Dalen Gabriel or Joe Flacco, but you're going to explode the whole thing if Shedeur Sanders is your quarterback. That's what I mean by, I don't know, it wouldn't go so far as to say that, he's bigger than the NFL or even bigger than Cleveland. However, he's pretty damn big. I don't know what the ratings were. We might can squeeze it in and put up some numbers as of the making of this video, but I would guess that it severely increased once the game started, and then decreased once he wasn't playing anymore. But the deal that he, was able to craft was a deal that put a lot of money in his pocket. So, there's a rookie pay structure that they've developed to where rookies don't really make a whole lot of money. They don't make a whole lot of money until, their subsequent years, whether it be, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line. They don't make a lot of money. They're basically restricted. And for whatever reason, they developed that pay structure. So what is different, though, is that Shedeur Sanders put it in his contract that he reserves all his rights, whether it be media or merchandising or what have you, and in turn made it so that he not only can, when the NFL tries to direct the narrative, he can combat that with his own social media presence and be able to tell his side of the story, and NFL not be able to tell him to take it down or whatever because, you have the jersey on or whatever, the rights, the NFL's rights stretch to previously. They don't stretch at all in terms of Shedeur Sanders now. And I think they're pretty upset about that. The other thing was that, the merchandising. They said he sold $250 million worth of jerseys. I believe is the highest selling jersey of the rookies. Not sure about the whole league, but at least the rookies. And that garnered him a commission of $14 million. Like in terms of percentage of his NFL salary, ridiculous. Like thousands of percent larger. I think he's making less than $1 million, I believe, in his for his NFL pay. He's not even really tripping on that. But he's gonna make more money off his YouTube channel, off of his media rights. They made Nike made a commercial already, saying that it's only a matter of time. And he did the signature watch thing. The NFL can't do nothing about it, and I don't even know if they make money. It might be a profit sharing deal or something. I don't know, the exact particulars, but it's definitely something that no other, especially rookie, has ever struck the deal. So then you look at what the owner said. Like, the owner a week or two ago came out and said that he had nothing to do with the Shedeur Sanders pick. Mr. Will Evans said something that makes a lot of sense. So if, for example, he goes to an owner's meeting or something and, they're asking him, like, how'd you let that deal happen? Well, he's already stated he had nothing to do with it. So because, there's only 31 owners or 31 or 32 owners, however many teams in the league. So that's a small fraternity of people. And they all want to make money off their teams. They if they don't have to give Shedeur Sanders $14 million, they're not going to give it to him. They got to give it to him, because they put it in his contract. What they don't want to happen is they don't want these upcoming college players that come from NIL deals in college to duplicate what Shedeur Sanders said. So when you look at it in terms of that, now you can see why they're handling Shedeur Sanders in the way they are. They probably thought, because most people are not used to change. So if you're, as the NFL, have been able to direct the narrative, kind of like they did with Colin Kaepernick, right? They push this narrative. They got all these different things, and they do all this dog and pony show type stuff to kind of besmirch his name. They tried to do the same thing with Shedeur Sanders. Said he wasn't prepared for the interviews. He was arrogant. He's this, he's that. Had all these different things. But Bucky, who's Deion's other son, also does some of the social media for Shedeur Sanders, especially since he owns it. He can do whatever he wants and allow anybody he wants to film because he owns it. Now, think about this. If you're used to, getting over on his players, in terms of merchandising, you ain't got to pay them no percentages or commissions or anything like that. You can push a narrative that they can't defend because, they don't have any rights to anything, media or whatever. You're going to be like, how did, when your buddies ask you, how did you let this happen, dude? Like, you have created a situation that we're not going to be able to come back from. How are you going to explain to your buddies, to think about it, if you had a bunch of guys, whatever, and they ask you, like, how'd you do that, dude? Like, you messing us up. Now we're going to have to deal with that. How are you going to respond to that? You're going to do a press conference, and you're going to push the narrative in the press so that when you see your boys and they ask you about it, you say, hey man, I had nothing to do with it. You saw the press conference. Now that all of it makes it, people were saying, like, why would he say that? Why would he say that? Will Evans pointed out that, it's behind the deal. It's about the money. And absolutely, it makes perfect sense. Why are they, he has a really nice game, preseason debut. They're down talking it. They don't want to give him too much praise. They didn't move at all from the depth chart. Like, he was number 4. He's still QB4 today. Tuesday, after the Friday that he, showed that he belongs. He showed that he wasn't supposed to be a 5th round pick. By the way, which was another way for the NFL to kind of give him the who are you and you're not who you think you are and whatever. They knew he was good, but again, he's got this deal crafted in his contract. He wants this put in his contract. Now, if this has never happened before, what do you think the reaction is going to be from all 32 teams? We don't want that, because what it's going to do is it's going to spark something that we don't want sparked, which is that same type of deal being reproduced over and over and over. Because once somebody sees that you were successful doing it, it's just like a successful defense or a successful offense. Everybody is going to copycat that. Once they find it's successful, and as they're seeing, Shedeur Sanders has profited from it tremendously already. It paid off, almost off the bat before he even took a snap in the NFL. And he really hasn't done an official snap because, as you saw, that guy kicked that 70-yard field goal that don't even count. They don't even put that in the record books because none of this counts. So technically, he hasn't even taken a snap yet. So it's crazy how, if you look at it in terms of business, it all makes sense. I don't believe racism necessarily has anything to do with, and if it does, it's secondary, because they're tripping on the bread. They're tripping on the money. They don't want to be handing out all, because can you imagine if you got all the time, if Mahomes and all these other guys, they did the same thing as Shedeur Sanders? That's a lot of money leaving the coffers of the NFL so that they could pay these players. And once the more money, the more power, the more, everything. And Will Evans also said that if you drop him down lower in the draft, now I don't know if this applies, it probably does, but I don't know how. But as it applies to rookies, if you drop, significantly in draft, to go to the 5th round, like Shedeur Sanders did, they did that to kind of counterbalance some of the revenue that he would make off his merchandising. So we're not going to pay you. So if you want this merchandising deal, we're not going to pay you the salary. We're going to pay you in the merchandising. And therefore, we have an opportunity to make, to get a better bargain if your jersey doesn't sell. Now, who knows what they thought and what projections they had for the jersey sales? They probably thought that if they push this narrative, that people are going to believe them like they had in the past, and it's going to sink his cachet or his popularity. It didn't work. Now they're stuck because they may have not, I heard some stuff, they pushed him out there, sabotage. Now, he didn't get a whole lot of reps, but it's a possibility that was the thought, because if he goes out there and stinks up the place, the NFL is going to push a narrative. Now they can suppress him, sit him on the bench, and let him wither away, because the narrative is going to be he's not really as good as we thought he was, or whatever the case. But now that he balled out, they don't want to really praise him very much because of the money. But what's going to happen is they're going to what's the sayings? Cut your nose off to spite your face. That's what they're going to do. They're so worried about their money that they're going to end up fumbling it. Cleveland doesn't have a good track record as it is, especially dealing with quarterbacks or whatever. But we'll see. But yeah, go check out urban legend Will Evans, and he breaks it down. I may or may not use some of his video, but he broke it down, and it makes a ton of sense. Everything that's happening now makes sense once you expose that deal. Now nobody's talking about that, and I don't know why, Maybe people are naive. I seen Pac-Man Jones. He got a podcast. They made no mention about it. They didn't even know that he didn't have an agent or anything like that. I don't know what's going on with that whole deal over there, but I had to turn it off because it just sounded ridiculous. But if you look at the bread and you look at, you know, how he structured the deal and how the NFL, they're billionaires, right? They want to keep most of the money. If you look at any company, you know, they will cut to save the profits. They don't want to pay you no more. They want to cut everything and do everything in their power to keep them profits up. Yeah. That's why they would, you know, they would try to suppress Shedeur Sanders because he made that deal that nobody else has, and they don't want that to get out. Nobody's talking about it. But you know, Will Evans, go check out his channel. He broke it down and it makes total sense. So with that, till next time, take care.